Hello everyone, welcome to ABG's Investor Days. Our next company will be Hexatronic. With us today we have the pleasure of hosting CEO Henrik Larsson Lyon. My name is Karl Bokvist, I'm an industrial analyst here from ABG and will be moderating a few questions at the end. But without further ado, Henrik, welcome, thank you for joining us, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm Henrik Larsson Lyon. I'm the CEO of Hexatronic Group, and we are active in fiber to the home solutions. That's our core business, so passive solutions for fiber to the home. I will make a small presentation. If we take the next slide, please. So just a summary, we are listed on Nasdaq Mid Cap since 2016. Revenues are roughly 2 billion SEK. A little bit more than 700 employees and approximately 9,000 shareholders. And we have two targets that we communicate, and that's a growth of revenues of at least 20% per year and an EBITDA target of at least 9%. So that's a short summary. Next slide, please. So first, about sustainability. We work more and more intensely on sustainability topics, and we see this as a demand from customers. Our larger customers are putting more and more demands on sustainability activities and goals that we should reach. But we also see internally among our employees that it's becoming more and more important. So this is a topic that we are working more and more intensely on. Next slide, please. So why Hexatronic and how we differentiate? And I would say the largest differentiator for us or with us is that we are able to supply, and we supply the complete passive network when it comes to fiber to the home. And we don't see any competitors being able to do this. And that means we produce fiber optic cables, we produce these plastic pipes, microducts where you blow the cables in. Where we have our own design of cabinets and closures, connectivity companies. So we have a complete solution that we know works very well together. And the key here is when you deploy a fiber optic network, and especially fiber to the home network, roughly 15% of the investment is about the material where we are active. And the rest, say the 85%, that's actually the cost to install the products. You need to dig, you need to hang them on poles and make the connections. So what we do, we focus on solutions that are quick and easy to install in order to reduce the installation time and then giving a benefit to our end customers. So that's what we focus very much on. To that, we also have training activities. So we have training companies today in telecoms in Sweden, Norway, UK and US. And we are targeting to have that in the German market also. And I'll come back to why it's important to have those activities, especially in Germany, UK. Later on. We also have field support. So we have engineers who are out helping our customers. When there are small problems, they make demos, small introductions on new products and so on. Something that has been very much appreciated by our customers. So you can say it's a value-based approach that we have when we sell our solutions. Next slide, please. So we are still small, even if we start to become a medium-sized player in our industry. We have to focus on a number of markets or a limited number of markets. So today, our focus markets, that's Sweden, Norway, Finland, it's UK, Germany, it's North America, so US and Canada, and New Zealand. What we have added recently is Baltics, because we made an acquisition there some weeks ago, and also Italy, where we made an acquisition some weeks ago. We are also looking into Australia, because in New Zealand we have a plant producing these microducts, and there is still a lot to do in the Australian market when it comes to fiber deployment. So that's the markets we focus on. And I will come back to the key growth markets. If you take the next slide, please. So first about the distribution of our sales. So these are the first 9 months this year. And you can see Sweden then represented 29% of our revenues. outside Europe, outside Sweden, that's 33% of our revenue. North America, 25%, and rest of the world, where New Zealand is a heavy part, is 13%. And if I go back to 2017, Sweden represented more than 50% of our revenue. So we have made a change here, and I will come back to that a little bit later also. We expect that Sweden will represent maybe 10-15% of our revenue in 3 years' time. And that's because the Swedish market is quite mature. It will gradually go down, but we target to grow both organically and by acquisitions in North America and Europe. Next slide, please. This is a statistics of fiber to the home connections in the world, and we have selected some countries. We get these statistics once a year, and actually we get new statistics later this week. So these are 1 year old. And you can see there Sweden in the bottom part of this, where last year 57% of all Swedish households had a fiber connection. So, and this is a very high figure when you compare internationally. When you look at the key markets where we want to grow the most in the future, Germany, UK, they are down at 3%. So they have just started to deploy fiber to the home. And it's big markets. United States, 16% fiber connections. Canada is on the same level. And you see Italy at 4%. So around the world, there's still extremely a lot to do in order to deploy fiber and fiber to the home. I will make some comments on the key markets. So next slide, please. This is a comparison. You see Sweden, UK, Germany, and the US, and you see the number of households, homes passed. Just to explain that, that's when you deploy a fiber cable in the street and you pass all the houses, then all houses are passed by the fiber. When you look at subscribers or connections, that's the number of houses that are actually connected to the fiber in the street. Normally, when you build a fiber network, not all households are connecting immediately to the fiber network. And you can see in Sweden, 86% homes passed. This means it's only the rural area left, and that's very expensive to build out. So I saw in the new budget of the Swedish government, they want to subsidize with another 1.4 billion SEK next year for making this happen with more fibers in the rural areas. And I'm sure there needs to be more subsidies to make this happen. The Swedish government has a goal of 98% of all Swedish households should be able to have a 1 gigabit per second connection in 2025. And then that will be very expensive to build. But when you look at UK, Germany, and US, there is still a lot to do, and there is a lot of households. It's gigantic markets for the future. A few words about these markets. So next slide, please. If you look at the UK market, you have some national players, British Telecom's part with Openreach, Virgin Media, CityFibre, and so on. They have announced, these players, that they are going to build 10 million, 4 million, 8 million homes connections, and most of them are by 2025. So there's huge projects that are starting up. Our main customer in the UK is CityFibre, where we currently have 50% of their need of cables and ducts and passive material. And we have seen that it's really starting to take off in the UK. It's not a money problem. The capital is there, like CityFibre is owned by Goldman Sachs, and they have said that we will finance up to £4 billion for making this happen. The problem and the speed of the rollout is the lack of people, hands and feet to make this happen. And that's also why we want to have training companies. So, for instance, with CityFibre, we have developed their training program. We are going to train all their people and also the contractors working on their projects, and also bring in new people out from outside into this market. Next slide, please. The German market is a little bit different. You have a couple of players who are building nationally there, like Deutsche Telekom, Deutsche Glasfaser, that is owned by EQT, also building nationally. And then you have some regional strong players. But what makes it very interesting with the German market for us is that they have more than 800 city networks in Germany. And they normally manage the electrical and gas networks in the city. And a lot of these will build fiber to the home. And it's quite similar to the Swedish market. In Sweden, we have roughly 150 city networks that also build fiber to the home. So we think this is a market that fits our concept very well. I mean, the full system, and we can train the people also. So Germany is still behind UK in terms of startup and deployment, but it's really starting to take off. And I would say the same there. It's not a money problem. It's the lack of people doing these installations. That's the big bottleneck. What we have also seen in Germany is that there starts to be a number of startups with heavy financial backing, a little bit like City Fibre in the UK, and with big plans of building nationally in Germany. And that's also very interesting for us, where we can bring our knowledge and systems to them. Next slide, please. The US market, just to mention, we have two types of businesses there. On the upper half of this slide, you have our duct business. 2.5 years ago, we acquired a duct manufacturing in Kentucky, and they produce pipes and conduits for both the energy cable market, but also for the telecom market. And we acquired them because we wanted a local production of microducts in the US market. It's a little bit separate business, what they do, but it's developing very well. It's a good demand in the market. So we, this year, added and started up a new plant in Texas to be able to cover a bigger part of the US. And we expect to make another plant or acquisition in the more western part of the US to become a national player in that field in the US. And at the same time, they are producing the microduct that we need for Hexatronic North America, and they are responsible for selling our complete system of fiber to the home. So we have still a small team, roughly 10 people. We have focused and are approved by 2 larger accounts there, operators, but we also focus on a small number of mid-size operators, and some of them are used to the way we build fiber to the home networks, because that's why we are in the US. They build their fiber to the home networks in a different way than we do here in Europe, and especially Sweden. And we see great advantages in introducing our system, big cost savings when the operators use our system compared to what they do today. So it's a very interesting market. Material prices are high and so on. And to support this, we made an acquisition of a training company in the US 1st of August, Light Brigade, the leading telecom training company in the US, based in Seattle. So they will also support with training on how to deploy our system. Next slide, please. Just briefly, our last quarter, the Q3. So we grew sales organically at 13%, and we are quite happy with that. We think we lost approximately 5% in sales due to COVID. EBITDA developing in a good way, also 11.8%, so clearly above our 9% target. On rolling 12, we are at 8.6%. So with a good fourth quarter, we should be able to reach our 9%. On the sales side, we will not reach our 20% sales target this year. I think we are at, for the 9 months, around 7% growth organically. Next slide, please. Well, when we look at this development long term, so you see the development quarter by quarter, rolling 12 months, and it's back since 2016. We have managed to reach our sales target of 20% all years, except last year we only grew 15%. We didn't make any acquisitions last year, and this year I already mentioned. Profit-wise, we had the peak in 2017 and then it dropped. The reason for the drop in 2007 or 18 was that We were very dependent on the Swedish market. It was more than 50% of our sales. And in 2018, one of the main investors here in Sweden stopped investing. We decided to keep most of our resources because we wanted to use that to focus and build up the business in UK and Germany and the US. So we have had lower profitability, but now it's developing in the right direction. So we start to see that we get now a payoff for the investments we have made. Next slide, please. And acquisitions, it's an important part of our strategy. So you can see the acquisitions we have made back since late 2012. We have a target to make at least 2 acquisitions per year. This year so far we have made 4, so it has been a good development compared to last year when we only made 0 actually. What we focus on now is trying to acquire microduct producers in Central Europe, connectivity companies in Central Europe, and the same goes for the US market and Canada. We would like to buy duct producers, connectivity companies there. We are looking for a training company in Germany, and we are also looking into the Australian market to see if we can acquire a company to get a good footprint in the Australian market, because that's the reason for us. I mean, we do acquisitions locally to get a good, strong and good local footprint and to build on that. Next slide, please. Yes, board, we have 2 new members, just to mention. Frida Westerberg, she used to be the CEO of IP Only here in Sweden, one of the main challengers of Telia, building a lot of fiber to the home, so very interesting background. And Helena Holmgren, she is the CEO of Pricer, also a listed Swedish company. I'll jump to the next, please. Main shareholders, we don't have any dominant big shareholder. It's mainly, I would say, Nordic small cap and micro cap funds that are the shareholders in Hexatronic Group. Next slide, please. So as a conclusion, why should one invest in Hexatronic? And we believe we have made a successful repositioning towards growth markets from a very large dependence on the Swedish market. We have now created good platforms in key growth markets. We provide high quality solutions, and with a very long history and experience in the fiber to the home business. We were involved already in 1998, making the first fiber to the home installation in Sweden. And that knowledge and experience we bring to the countries we go. I already mentioned, but we see that we have built good platforms for growth in these new strategic markets. And we are intending to continue to reinforce those platforms by acquisitions. And we have a proven acquisition model. I would say that we primarily acquire family-owned businesses, and they like our concept with a very decentralized organization. We almost want the sellers to feel that they still own the company. So very decentralized. We cooperate a lot between the companies in the group and exchanging products and adding to their different portfolios. And it has worked very well. We have not lost any of these CEOs or owners that we have acquired. So it's a good model that we have. And also finally, I would say now with the COVID, we see that, and we haven't seen it in Sweden really. We have such a good fiber optic network in Sweden that it has worked well to work from home and do homeschooling. But when you look at UK, Germany, US, a lot of people still remain with a copper connection, 10, 12 megabit. And then I would say it's almost impossible working from home. So we have many examples of this during the COVID, where actually the connectivity at home is a problem. And I think this will boost the deployment of both mobile and fixed networks. And we also expect that both on European level and US level, there will be infrastructure programs to boost infrastructure programs, projects such as fiber deployments. It's a necessity for the future. So that was a quick review of Hexatronic Group, and I believe I managed within my time.
Yes, you sure did, Henrik. Thank you. So first question, and you mentioned parts of that strategy in the US when it comes to your new factory in Texas, and also the ambition to expand capacity further, either inorganically or by doing a greenfield investment. So for people interested in this market, is it mainly a capacity play that you need this in order to supply more products to your customers?
Yeah, I would say we can expand in that business. We can expand our plant in Texas, but the problem is, I mean, US is so huge, so you don't transport these. It's big drums with plastic pipes, a lot of air, a little bit lower value add. So it doesn't make sense to send it to the West Coast, for instance. So that's why you need a platform on the West Coast to truly be a national player.
And also your regional exposure, as you mentioned, Sweden has declined as a share of total group sales. But if we instead look forward a bit, that I believe you also commented on, in perhaps 5 years' time, how would your sort of ideal or your ambition in terms of the group's regional split look like then?
No, I would still say Sweden is probably roughly 10% of our business. The fiber to the home deployment has decreased in Sweden in 5 years' time, for sure. But we also see other projects. So, for instance, the transport network, where the fiber optic network that connects the cities, there we will see more investment because it starts to be old, and also they need more capacity and redundancy. We see data centers popping up everywhere. They need fiber connections. We have the area of 5G, and 5G is totally dependent on fiber to the antennas. So I still think Sweden will be roughly 10%, but we should see a strong growth in Germany, UK, and US mainly.
So you're talking about potentially going from fiber to the home to other parts of fiber to the A or X or other parts of these markets?
And definitely, we already do this. I mean, currently there are a couple of big transport network projects in Sweden, for instance.
And I think the final one here has to do with acquisitions, and a bit broader one. So first of all, it's a key part of your strategy. The first sub-part of the question has to do with competition. For these targets, which kind of players are out there bidding for the same companies as you are interested in? Are we talking about infrastructure, private equity? Are they in other parts of the value chain, for example? And then the follow-up, once you do integrate these companies, what is your sort of business plan when it comes to achieving synergies, either on the cost or revenue side?
Yeah, so first, when you look at the competitive landscape in acquiring companies, it's clearly increasing. There are more, I would say, competitors active in this field, and we also see both Chinese and Indian players who are interested to enter, especially Europe. Private equity, they are investing heavily in the operators, buying fiber optic cable operators. So that's where you see that. We don't see them so active in the material part where we are. When it comes to acquisitions, we rarely look at cost synergies. For us, it's to buy good companies, good people. It could be a niche player, like we did in the UK. They were extremely good in connectivity solutions. But to that, then, we add the fiber optic cables and microducts from the plant in Sweden. So I think this UK case is very interesting. We have almost increased their revenue by 10 times since we acquired them. And that's very much adding product from other group companies. So that's the strategy.
With that, thank you very much, Henrik, for joining us today. Thank you, Hexatronic, and thank you all of you who have been listening.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.